The return. The sound of rain echoed against the glass walls of Sundar Pichai's office, soft yet steady, like the rhythm of time itself. It was late evening in California, and most of the Google campus had already emptied out. The lights of Silicon Valley flickered outside. And inside the CEO's corner office, Sundar sat alone, staring at the faint glow of his laptop screen. His inbox overflowed with unread emails, contracts, reports, and urgent requests. Yet his mind was far away, traveling back to a time when life was simpler, when he wasn't the leader of one of the biggest companies in the world. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. Sometimes, even with all the success, wealth, and recognition, Sundar felt an emptiness. It wasn't about ambition or innovation. It wasn't about money. It was something personal, something human, something that had been left unresolved years ago. He remembered his younger days in India, before the world even knew his name. He remembered the quiet streets, the sound of vendors calling out in the mornings, the smell of chai drifting through the air. And among those memories was one face he could never forget. Her name was Anjali, his first love. They had been inseparable during college. She wasn't just a friend, she was his anchor, his inspiration, the one who believed in him when even he doubted himself. Their conversations stretched late into the night, filled with dreams of the future, laughter about small things, and the gentle comfort of companionship. Sundar had once imagined building a life with her, a family, a shared destiny. But life had taken a different turn. After graduation, his opportunities took him abroad, and the distance slowly created silence between them. Years passed. Sundar rose in the tech world, his name tied to innovations and leadership. Yet deep inside, there was always the thought of what had been left behind. He had heard nothing about her in 2 decades. No calls, no letters, no messages. Sometimes, he wondered if she had forgotten him, or worse, if life had been unkind to her, but he never had the courage to reach out. As the rain tapped harder against the windows, Sundar was startled by a soft knock on his office door. It was unusual. Nobody disturbed him this late unless it was urgent. He looked up, expecting to see his assistant. Instead, a young receptionist entered, holding an envelope in her hand. "Sir, this was delivered here today," she said politely. No sender's name, but it was marked personal. "I thought you should see it right away." Sundar thanked her and waited until she left before opening it. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper. The handwriting was delicate, neat, almost old-fashioned. The moment his eyes fell on the signature at the bottom, his hands began to tremble. It was from Anjali. His breath caught in his throat. 20 years of silence broken by a single letter. He quickly unfolded it, his heart pounding like it hadn't in years. "Dear Sundar, I don't know if this letter will even reach you, or if you will remember me after so long. I have watched your journey from afar with pride. You became everything we once dreamed about under the stars. But there is something I need to tell you, something I cannot carry alone anymore. I will be in San Francisco for 1 week. If you wish to see me, I'll be at the old cafe on Mission Street, the same place we once spoke about during our final night together. I'll wait there this Friday at 6 p.m. After that, I may never return. With respect, Anjali." Sundar's chest tightened. The old cafe. He remembered it well. Back in college, they had joked about how one day when life carried them far apart, they would meet again in a quiet corner cafe, away from the noise of the world, to see if their bond had survived. He never imagined that promise would come, alive after so many years. His hands gripped the paper, knuckles white as 1,000 questions rushed through his mind. Why now? Why after 2 decades of silence? What was this secret she carried that she could not hold any longer? And why did her words feel like a farewell? He sat frozen, staring at the letter, while the rain outside grew heavier, mirroring the storm inside his heart. That night, Sundar barely slept. Every memory of Anjali came flooding back. The way her eyes sparkled when she laughed. The way she believed in his potential when he was just a quiet boy with big dreams. The way she once held his hand before he left for America, whispering words of courage that stayed with him forever. When morning came, Sundar walked into the office like a man haunted. His assistants noticed his distraction, his eyes lost in thought, his usual calm demeanor cracked by something personal. He canceled meetings, ignored phone calls, and retreated into silence. As Friday approached, his anticipation grew unbearable. He found himself rehearsing what he would say, how he would explain 2 decades of absence, how he would ask her about her life, her struggles, her joys. But beneath it all was a fear he couldn't shake. What if she was married? What if she had moved on completely? What if she was only here to say goodbye forever? Finally, the day arrived. At exactly 5:55 p.m., Sundar walked into the cafe on Mission Street. It was small, quiet, the kind of place that carried the smell of roasted coffee beans and old wooden tables polished by time. His heart thudded in his chest as his eyes scanned the room. And then he saw her. Anjali sat by the window, dressed simply, her hair tied back, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. She looked older, of course, but in a way that carried grace, not loss. The years had changed her, but Sundar recognized her instantly. The sight of her made his throat tighten. She looked up, and for a moment their eyes met. 20 years vanished in that single gaze. Sundar walked slowly toward her, his steps heavy with emotion. He wanted to speak, to smile, to say something, light to break the tension. But before he could, Anjali's eyes filled with tears. She placed her cup down, and in a trembling voice, she whispered words that froze him where he stood. Sundar, there's something you must know about the life I lived after you left. The confession, the cafe seemed to fall into silence, as if the world outside had muted itself to give this reunion the weight it deserved. Sundar stood frozen, staring at Anjali, her trembling words still hanging in the air. He had imagined this moment for days, perhaps even years, but nothing had prepared him for the way her voice cracked, or for the glisten of tears that threatened to fall from her tired eyes. He lowered himself slowly into the chair across from her, his movements careful, as though he was afraid that any sudden gesture might shatter the fragile moment. He wanted to speak, to reassure her, to tell her that nothing needed to be explained. Yet something in her face told him that this wasn't just about rekindled memories. It was about something heavier, something she had carried alone for far too long. Anjali took a deep breath, her hands still wrapped around her cup of tea, though it had already cooled. After you left for America, I told myself I would be strong, she began softly. I thought I could keep chasing my own dreams, that distance wouldn't matter. But reality was crueler than I expected. My family, they pressured me. They didn't understand why I wanted to wait for someone who was thousands of miles away. They kept reminding me of tradition, of duty. I fought them at first, but in the end, I gave in. I married a man they chose for me. Sundar felt his chest tighten. He had suspected something like this, but hearing it in her own words hurt in a way he hadn't anticipated. He wanted to ask questions, to know who the man was, what kind of life she had lived. But he stayed quiet, letting her continue. Her eyes drifted toward the window as if replaying the years in her mind. He was kind at first, or at least he pretended to be. But as time went on, I discovered his temper, his arrogance. He didn't respect me, Sundar. He didn't see me as a partner. I became invisible in my own home. My dreams didn't matter. My voice didn't matter. I stayed for years convincing myself it would get better. But it never did. Her words carried a weight that pressed heavily between them. Sundar clenched his fists beneath the table, anger rising in him. Not at her, but at the thought of someone he once loved suffering in silence. He longed to reach out, to comfort her, but he held himself back, sensing that this was her moment to release what she had held inside for decades. Anjali's voice wavered as she went on. I tried to hide my pain from the world. Everyone thought we were a perfect family. But behind closed doors, I cried more nights than I can count. There were days I thought about leaving, but I had no one to turn to. And then came my son. The word struck Sundar like a lightning bolt. His eyes widened. Your son? He asked gently. his voice barely above a whisper. A small, sorrowful smile touched her lips. Yes. My son. His name is Arav. He became my reason to keep going. He gave me strength when I had none. Every time I looked at him, I was reminded that I had to survive, for his sake, if not for mine. I poured all the love I once dreamed of giving into him. But even then it was hard, raising him in a house filled with bitterness. It broke me in ways I can't explain. Sundar swallowed hard, his heart aching at the thought. Anjali had carried so much pain and he hadn't been there to know, to support her, to fight for her. Guilt swept over him in waves, though he knew deep down it wasn't entirely his fault. Still, he couldn't help but wonder if things might have been different had he written to her, called her, or found the courage to fight for their bond. Anjali leaned closer, her voice dropping lower. But Sundar, that's not the whole truth. The reason I came here, the reason I had to see you after all these years, it's about my son. Arav is not just my reason for living. He is also your son. The cafe seemed to spin around Sundar. His breath caught in his throat, and for a moment he couldn't move. Her words pierced through the air with a force that left him stunned. His mind tried to process it, but everything blurred into disbelief and shock. My son? Sundar whispered, his voice breaking. Anjali's tears finally fell, sliding down her cheeks. Yes, Sundar. Arav is your son. I never told you because I thought you deserved to chase your dreams without being held back. I thought I could raise him alone, but as the years passed, he kept asking about his father. I couldn't keep the truth from him forever. He deserves to know you. And you. You deserve to know him. Sundar's hands trembled as he gripped the edge of the table. A rush of emotions consumed him. Shock, joy, pain, regret, and an overwhelming love he didn't know he was capable of. He felt robbed of years, robbed of moments he could have spent watching his child grow, hearing his laughter, guiding him through life. His mind raced back to the letter, to her words about carrying something she could no longer hold. Now it all made sense. This wasn't just about rekindled memories. This was about a bond deeper than time, about blood, about fatherhood he never knew he had. He finally found his voice, though it cracked as he spoke. Anjali, why didn't you tell me? Why keep this from me all these years? Her lips quivered. Because I thought I was protecting you. I didn't want to become a burden on your journey. You were building something extraordinary, Sundar. I saw you rise, and I didn't want to be the reason you hesitated. But now I realize that hiding the truth only took away something precious from all of us. The silence that followed was unbearable. Sundar's chest heaved with heavy breaths. Tears filled his eyes, and he no longer tried to hold them back. He looked at her with raw emotion, the weight of 20 years pressing down on his heart. Finally, he whispered, Where is he? Where is Arav? Anjali looked at him steadily, her eyes filled with both sorrow and hope. He's here, Sundar. He came with me. He doesn't know the truth yet. I told him we were coming to meet an old friend of mine. But tomorrow, I want him to meet his father. The word struck him with both joy and terror. Tomorrow, his son, the child he had never met, never held, never guided. In just a few hours his life would change forever. But before Sundar could respond, before he could even take in the enormity of what she had revealed, Anjali's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen and her face instantly turned pale. She grabbed the phone, her hands shaking, her eyes darting nervously. Sundar leaned forward, alarmed. Anjali, what is it? Her lips parted, but her voice was barely a whisper. It's him, my husband. He knows we're here. The storm, the cafe, once a place of quiet comfort, suddenly felt suffocating. The warm glow of its lamps dimmed in Sundar's eyes as he watched the color drain from Anjali's face. Her trembling hands gripped the phone so tightly that he feared it might shatter. The faint buzz of the device echoed between them like the ticking of a time bomb. Sundar leaned forward, his calm exterior cracking as his voice broke the silence. Anjali, what do you mean? What does he know? She swallowed hard, her eyes darting around the cafe as though expecting her husband to appear at any moment. I didn't tell him where I was going, but he must have found out. He has always been controlling, always suspicious. Sundar, if he comes here, he won't be calm. He has a temper and he won't hesitate to create a scene. Her voice quivered with fear, and Sundar felt something stir inside him, a protective instinct he had not felt in years. The thought of Anjali living under the shadow of such a man made his heart burn with anger. For 2 decades, he had built empires of technology, solved problems that touched millions. Yet here was a problem raw and human, demanding not intellect but courage. He reached across the table, placing his hand gently over hers. You're safe here. With me. He won't hurt you. Anjali shook her head, tears forming in her eyes. You don't know him, Sundar. When he loses control, he doesn't think. That's why I stayed silent for so long. Why I never told you about Arav. I was afraid of what he might do if he found out. The words struck Sundar like daggers. The idea that she had lived in fear all these years, sacrificing her own happiness and his chance at fatherhood, weighed heavily on him. Before he could reply, the entrance bell of the cafe chimed. The door swung open and a tall man in his 40s stormed inside. His presence was commanding, his movements sharp, his expression twisted with rage. His eyes locked immediately onto Anjali, and in that instant Sundar knew this was her husband. The cafe fell silent. Other customers froze, sensing the tension that crackled in the air. The man's voice thundered across the room. Anjali, what is the meaning of this? Who is he? Anjali's lips trembled, but she could not speak. Sundar rose slowly, his tall frame steady, his gaze calm but unwavering. I am Sundar, he said evenly, his voice measured. An old friend. The man's eyes narrowed, scanning Sundar from head to toe. There was recognition in them, a flicker that suggested he knew more than Sundar had expected. Sundar Pichai, he spat, as though the name were poison. The great CEO, the man who left India to chase his glory. And now you sit here with my wife? The accusation cut through the room, drawing curious glances from the other patrons. Sundar's composure remained, though inside his blood boiled. We were talking, nothing more. There is no reason for you to raise your voice. But the man slammed his fist against the table, making the cups rattle. No reason? No reason? She sneaks behind my back to meet you, and you tell me there's no reason. You think your wealth and status make you untouchable? Anjali flinched, and Sundar noticed her instinctive retreat, the way her body recoiled as though bracing for impact. That small movement spoke volumes about the years she had endured under his control. Sundar took a step forward, his voice firm now, no longer soft. Anjali is not your property. She is a human being. She has every right to meet whoever she wishes. The man's face darkened. Don't lecture me about rights, Pichai. You don't know what she owes me. You don't know the sacrifices I've made. Anjali's voice finally broke through, trembling yet resolute. You didn't sacrifice for me. You took from me. You took my freedom, my dreams, and my happiness, and I cannot let you take my son's truth. The word silenced the cafe. Sundar's eyes widened slightly. Anjali had spoken openly, her fear giving way to defiance, but her husband's expression twisted further, rage consuming him. Truth? What truth? He demanded, his voice rising. Anjali's hands shook, but she looked directly into his eyes. Arav deserves to know who his real father is. The words crashed into the room like thunder. The cafe gasped, though no one dared move. Sundar's heart pounded in his chest as the man's gaze snapped toward him, fury blazing. Him? The man growled, pointing a trembling finger at Sundar. You dare say he is the father? Anjali's tears spilled freely now, but her voice was steady. Yes, Sundar is Arav's father, and I will no longer hide it. The man's face turned crimson, his fists clenched so tightly that his knuckles whitened. For a terrifying moment, Sundar thought he might lash out. Instinctively, Sundar stepped in front of Anjali, shielding her with his body. Enough, Sundar said firmly, his voice carrying the weight of years of leadership, calm but unyielding. If you want to talk, we will talk with respect. But if you intend to harm her, you will go through me first. The cafe manager nervously approached, his hands raised. Sir, please, this is a peaceful place. If this continues, I will have to call the police. The husband sneered, his chest heaving. His eyes darted from Sundar to Anjali, then back again, calculating his next move. Finally, with a low growl, he stepped back, his voice dropping into something colder. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. He turned sharply and stormed out, the cafe door slamming shut behind him. For a long moment, silence hung heavy in the air. Patrons whispered nervously, their eyes filled with both pity and curiosity. Sundar slowly turned to Anjali, who collapsed into her seat, her face buried in her hands. He knelt beside her, his voice gentle once more. It's all right. He's gone. But Anjali shook her head. No, Sundar. You don't understand. He won't stop. Now that he knows, he'll come after me. And Arav. Her words pierced him. Sundar realized that this was bigger than a confession, bigger than rediscovered love. This was a battle for truth, freedom, and the future of a child he had never met but who carried his blood. He looked into her tear-streaked face, his own heart heavy yet resolute. Then we face it together. No more hiding. Anjali's sobs quieted, but her eyes still carried fear. But Sundar, you don't know how far he will go. He has connections, he has power, and he has nothing to lose. Sundar took her hands, firmly in his gaze unwavering. Anjali, for 20 years I lost you. For 20 years I lost my son. I will not lose either of you again. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed once more. She glanced at it and her face turned pale. She handed it to Sundar with trembling hands. On the screen was a single message. If you don't bring Arav back tonight, both of you will regret it. The meeting, the ride back from the cafe, was cloaked in silence. Sundar insisted on accompanying Anjali, not trusting that her husband's threats were empty. As the car glided through San Francisco's dimly lit streets, Sundar's mind wrestled with emotions he couldn't fully name. Fear, anger, hope, and an almost childlike anticipation tangled within him. Every beat of his heart whispered a single truth. He was about to meet his son. Anjali sat beside him, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The glow of streetlights brushed against her face, revealing the exhaustion she carried not just from tonight, but from years of enduring a life that had stolen her freedom. Sundar wanted to speak, to ask her 1,000 questions, but he respected her silence. He knew her thoughts were consumed by the man who had threatened them both. Finally, the car pulled up outside a modest apartment complex. The building was simple, the kind of place where lives passed quietly, unnoticed by the noise of the city. As they stepped inside, Sundar felt his palms grow damp. He had delivered speeches before thousands, faced investors and governments, yet never had he felt such nervousness. Anjali unlocked the door, her movements hesitant as though even the walls could be listening. When the door swung open, the faint sound of laughter drifted toward them. Sundar froze. The sound was light, pure, filled with innocence. The sound of a boy who had no idea his life was about to change forever. Arav, Anjali called softly as they stepped into the living room. From the hallway emerged a boy of about 16. His hair fell slightly into his eyes, and he carried himself with an energy that reminded Sundar painfully of his own youth. There was a spark in his gaze, curious and intelligent, though softened by the warmth of childhood still lingering in his features. "Ma, you're back," Arav said with a smile before his eyes shifted toward Sundar. Curiosity flickered across his face. "Who's this?" Anjali hesitated, her lips parting as though the words refused to come. Sundar stepped forward, his voice gentle, steady. "Hello, Arav. My name is Sundar. I'm an old friend of your mother's." The boy tilted his head slightly, his gaze sharp as though trying to measure this stranger who had suddenly entered his world. "Oh, from India?" Sundar nodded. "Yes, from India." The simplicity of the exchange belied the storm raging inside him. Every part of him wanted to embrace the boy, to say the truth that burned in his chest, that he was his father. But Sundar knew this moment could not be rushed. The truth, when revealed, needed care, not force. Anjali gestured for them to sit. As they settled into the small living room, Sundar noticed little details that spoke of Airav's life. A stack of schoolbooks on the table, a chessboard half played by the window, sketches pinned to the wall. Each piece told him something about the boy he had never known, the boy who was his blood. "You like chess?" Sundar asked softly, nodding toward the board. Airav's eyes brightened. "Yes, I love it. I play online too. Sometimes I stay up late just to finish a game." He chuckled shyly, then glanced at his mother as if seeking permission to keep speaking. Sundar smiled, his heart aching. "I used to play as well when I was your age. I wasn't very good, but I loved the game. It teaches patience." Airav leaned forward, intrigued. "You play? Ma never told me that. Maybe we can play together sometime." The invitation, so innocent, struck Sundar deeply. He forced himself to remain composed, but inside he was breaking. A boy who didn't know the truth had just unknowingly extended an olive branch to the father he had been denied. Anjali watched silently, her eyes glistening. Sundar noticed the way her shoulders eased slightly, as though for the first time in years she felt a moment of peace. But the peace didn't last. Sundar's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his heart sank. A message from an unknown number, short and cold. "I warned you. You will regret this." He turned the screen slightly so Anjali could see. Her face paled instantly, her hands clutching her sari as though bracing for a blow. "He won't stop," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "He's watching us." Sundar placed the phone down firmly. "Let him watch. I won't let him harm either of you, not anymore." Airav looked between them, his brows furrowing. "Ma, what's going on? Who's sending those messages?" Anjali froze, her lips trembling. She had promised herself she would tell him the truth, but now, under the shadow of her husband's threats, her courage wavered. Sundar reached out gently, his voice steady but kind. "Airav, your mother has carried a truth for many years. It's not easy to speak of, but you deserve to know. Tomorrow we'll sit together and everything will be explained. For tonight, just know that you are safe and that nothing will take that away from you." The boy's eyes searched his face, sensing that these words carried something profound. Though confused, he nodded slowly, trusting the gentleness in Sundar's tone. Later, as the house fell quiet, Anjali led Sundar to the balcony. The city stretched below them, lights twinkling like distant stars. For a moment neither spoke, letting the cool night air wash over their weary hearts. Finally, Anjali whispered, "You saw him, Sundar. He's so much like you. The way he tilts his head when he's curious, the way he focuses when he talks. Sometimes I look at him and see your reflection." Sundar's throat tightened. "All these years I should have been there. To guide him, to protect him. I can't get those years back, but I promise you I will not lose the ones ahead." Anjali turned to him, tears streaking her face. "But what if he takes Airav from me? What if he uses his power to separate us?" Sundar's jaw clenched, his resolve hardening. "Then he will face me. I may have spent years building technology, but when it comes to family, I will fight with everything I have." They stood in silence, two souls bound by the same fear and the same hope. Inside, Airav slept peacefully, unaware that the truth of his life was about to be revealed, unaware that danger loomed closer with every passing hour. As Sundar gazed at the stars, a single thought echoed in his mind. Tomorrow he would tell his son the truth. Tomorrow he would step into the role he had been denied. But as he turned back toward the living room, the glow of headlights cut through the curtains. A car had stopped outside the building. The sound of a door slamming shut shattered the night's stillness. Anjali's breath caught. She gripped Sundar's arm, her face stricken with dread. "It's him," she whispered. The confrontation. The night air outside the apartment grew heavier, thick with the weight of what was about to unfold. Sundar's eyes locked on the headlights spilling through the curtains, his body tense, his breath steady but sharp. Beside him, Anjali clung to his arm, her trembling betraying the fear that had lived within her for so many years. Down the hallway, the faint sound of Arav stirring in his room echoed. He was still unaware of the storm that was descending upon his world, still oblivious to the truth of his parentage, still living in the fragile calm of innocence. Sundar's chest tightened at the thought of his son being caught in this chaos. The sharp sound of footsteps on the gravel outside broke the silence. Then came a knock. No, not a knock, but a pounding at the door. Aggressive, demanding, filled with anger. Each strike of the fist reverberated through the small apartment like a drum of war. Anjali gasped. "He's here." Sundar stepped forward, gently guiding her behind him. His voice was low but resolute. "Stay back. Let me handle this." The pounding grew louder, followed by a voice that sent chills down Anjali's spine. "Anjali, open this door now. You think you can humiliate me? You think you can hide?" Sundar exhaled slowly, centering himself. He opened the door, revealing the man standing there, his face twisted in fury. His eyes immediately darted past Sundar, searching for Anjali, but Sundar blocked the entry with his frame. "We need to talk," Sundar said calmly, though his tone carried the authority of someone used to being heard. The man sneered. "Talk? After you steal my wife and my son, you think I want to talk?" Sundar's jaw tightened. "Anjali is not yours to own, and Arav deserves the truth." The man shoved forward, but Sundar held his ground. For a moment the two men stood inches apart, the tension between them like a taut rope ready to snap. Anjali's voice broke through from behind Sundar. "Please stop this, don't wake Arav." The husband's laugh was cruel, sharp. "Wake him? Oh, he should be awake. He should hear the truth from me, not from you. He should know the lies you've fed him all these years." Sundar's eyes narrowed. "The only lie has been the one you forced her to live in. You trapped her, silenced her, made her afraid. That ends tonight." The husband's fury boiled over. He pushed against Sundar, forcing his way inside. The small living room suddenly felt suffocating as the two men stood face to face, the air between them charged with hostility. Anjali rushed forward, her hands raised. "Please don't do this here. Arav, he doesn't know yet. Please." But Arav's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Ma, what's going on?" He stood at the edge of the hallway, his eyes wide with confusion. He had been woken by the noise, his face pale as he tried to piece together the scene before him. His mother in tears, a stranger standing protectively in their living room, and his father, at least the man he had always believed to be his father, burning with rage. "Arav," Anjali whispered, her voice breaking. The boy looked at her, then at Sundar, then at the man he knew as his father. "Someone tell me what's happening." The husband smirked, seizing the moment. "What's happening? Your mother has been lying to you, boy. All these years, she's hidden the truth from you." Anjali's knees buckled, tears streaming down her face. "Please don't." But the man's words came out like venom. "This man, this stranger, is your real father." The room fell silent. Arav's eyes darted to Sundar, disbelief and shock flickering in his expression. His lips parted, but no words came. He shook his head slightly as though refusing to accept what he had just heard. Sundar stepped forward, his voice soft but steady, the weight of his emotions pressing through every syllable. "Arav, it's true. I am your father. I never knew about you until now. If I had known, nothing in this world would have kept me away. Every choice I made, every success I achieved, it all feels empty compared to this moment standing here with you." Arav's chest rose and fell rapidly, his breathing uneven. He turned to his mother, his voice cracking. "Is this true, Maya? Anjali's?" Sobs made her words tremble. "Yes, my son, it's true. I kept it from you because I thought I was protecting you. I thought I was protecting him too. But you deserve to know who you are." The boy stumbled back, his hand clutching the wall for balance. "All this time, all these years, you let me believe." His eyes filled with tears, a mixture of betrayal and confusion clouding them. "Why now? Why tell me now? Anjali moved toward him, reaching out. Because I couldn't carry the lie any longer. Because you're old enough now to understand. And because your real father is here, ready to love you the way you deserve. Before Arav could respond, his stepfather's rage erupted. Love. Him. What love? You left me humiliated raising a boy who wasn't even mine. You made a fool of me. He lunged forward, his hand raised as though to strike. Instinctively, Sundar grabbed his arm midair, his grip strong, his voice thunderous. Enough! Sundar's roar shook the small apartment, silencing even the boy's sobs. You will not lay another finger on them. Not tonight, not ever again. The man struggled, but Sundar's grip was unyielding. Years of restraint, of calm composure, broke in that instant, replaced by a father's raw protectiveness. Sundar pushed him back, his voice firm, every word carved with finality. You have taken their peace for years. You have used fear as your weapon. But that ends now. Arav is my son, and I will protect him. Anjali deserves her freedom, and I will make sure she has it. The man glared, his chest heaving, his pride shattered. For a moment it seemed he might fight back, but something in Sundar's gaze, a fire that refused to bend, forced him to falter. He spat on the floor, his words dripping with venom. This isn't over. You'll regret crossing me. He stormed out, the door slamming shut behind him, the echo vibrating through the apartment. Silence lingered. Only the sound of Anjali's sobs and Ayarav's uneven breathing filled the room. Sundar stood still, his chest rising and falling, his fists slowly unclenching. He turned to Ayarav, whose eyes were still wide with disbelief. Sundar's voice softened once more. I know this is too much, I know you're hurt and confused, but please believe me when I say this. I never abandoned you. I never knew. And now that I do, I will never walk away again. Arav stared at him, tears rolling down his cheeks. His voice was shaky, uncertain. How do I know you mean it? How do I know you won't disappear like before? Sundar stepped closer, his own eyes wet. Because this time I have something stronger than ambition or success. I have you, and I will prove it every day if you let me. The boy's lips trembled, caught between doubt and hope. He turned toward his mother, then back to Sundar. And then slowly, hesitantly, he whispered, Prove it. The weight of those words settled in the room, heavy with both challenge and possibility. Sundar nodded, his heart steady now with a new resolve. I will. But even as those words lingered, Sundar knew the battle wasn't over. The threat of the man who had stormed out loomed large, his words echoing like a promise of war. And, in the shadows of the night, danger still lingered, waiting for its moment to strike. The choice, the apartment was quiet after the storm of rage, but the silence felt fragile, like glass that could shatter at any second. Anjali sat curled on the sofa, her face pale and weary, while Arav paced restlessly in the narrow space near the window. Sundar stood by the door, his eyes fixed on the night beyond, knowing deep down that the battle wasn't over. The man who had left with venom in his words would not let go so easily. Sundar had seen enough of human ambition and bitterness to recognize when someone was willing to cross all boundaries. Inside, Airav's mind churned. He had grown up believing one man was his father, flawed, harsh, often distant, but still a father. Now in a single night, his world had been turned upside down. His real father was here, standing like a shield, speaking with a voice filled with calm strength. Airav wanted to believe him, wanted to feel the security of those words, but doubt and fear clung to him. Maya, Airav finally said, his voice strained. Why didn't you ever tell me? Why keep it all secret? You always said honesty was the most important thing. Anjali's tears flowed again and she reached for his hand. Because I thought I was protecting you. I thought if you grew up believing you had a father, even a harsh one, it would be better than growing up with questions and emptiness. I carried the weight of that lie every day, Airav. I told myself I was doing it for you, but now I see it only hurt us both. Airav pulled his hand away, his chest heaving, And now what? Everything I thought I knew is gone. His voice cracked as he turned to Sundar. You say you're my father, but I don't know you. You weren't there when I needed someone. You didn't see me fall, or help me when I was scared. You just show up now after all these years. How am I supposed to believe this isn't temporary? The words struck Sundar deeply, more painful than any insult ever thrown at him in the corporate world. He stepped closer, his voice, though heavy with emotion. You're right, Arav, I wasn't there. I didn't hear your first cry. I didn't hold you when you took your first steps. I wasn't there to cheer when you won your first game or to wipe your tears when you failed. Those are years I can never reclaim, and I will carry that regret for the rest of my life. But let me tell you this. From the moment I learned you were my son, my life changed. Every success, every title, every achievement means nothing if I can't stand by you now. I can't rewrite the past, but I can fight for the future, our future. Only you can decide if you'll let me. Arav's eyes glistened, torn between anger and longing. His lips trembled, but before he could respond, the sound of a car screeching to a halt outside cut through the night. Then came hurried footsteps. Anjali's face drained of color. He's back. Sundar's body stiffened, his instincts sharp. He gestured for Anjali to stay behind him. Lock the bedroom door with Arav inside, he whispered. But Arav shook his head fiercely. No, I'm not hiding. I've been silent too long. I need to face this. Before anyone could move, the door burst open with a violent crack. The man stormed in, his face twisted with rage, his hand clutching a metal rod he must have grabbed from his car. His eyes burned with humiliation and hatred. You think you can steal them from me? He shouted. You think you can ruin me, Pichai? I'll show you what happens to men who take what's mine. Anjali screamed, moving instinctively to shield Arav, but Sundar stepped forward, his frame towering, his voice commanding. Put it down. You don't have to do this. The man sneered. Don't tell me what I have to do. You may be powerful, out there, in your world of glass towers and wealth, but in here you're nothing. He swung the rod wildly. Sundar caught it mid-air, the metal vibrating against his palm. The strength of the strike jarred him, but he held firm, his eyes never leaving the man's. With a sudden twist, he wrenched the weapon free and tossed it aside, the clatter echoing across the room. This ends now, Sundar said, his voice steady but thunderous. You've ruled with fear for too long. You tried to break her spirit, but you failed. You tried to claim a boy who was never yours, but now the truth stands in front of you. There is nothing left for you here but your pride. Leave before you destroy yourself further. The man's chest heaved, his rage sputtering into desperation. His eyes darted to Arav, who stood tall despite the fear in his gaze. Boy, tell me, the man demanded. After everything I've done, after raising you, do you really choose him over me? The room fell into silence. The choice hung heavy in the air. Arav looked at his mother, then at Sundar, then at the man who had claimed him for years. His voice shook, but there was steel beneath it. You never raised me, Arav said quietly. You controlled me. You scared me. You made me feel like I wasn't enough. A father isn't someone who just lives in the same house. A father is someone who protects you, believes in you, stands by you. You never did that. But he... Arav pointed at Sundar, tears streaming down his face. He's been here one night, and already I feel safer than I ever did with you. Anjali covered her mouth, sobbing, while Sundar's eyes filled with tears he could no longer hide. The man staggered, the weight of rejection striking him harder than any physical blow. His shoulders slumped, his rage unraveling into emptiness. Without another word, he turned and stormed out, his footsteps fading into the night. The apartment finally fell into true silence.